Hey guys, it's the next day. I know I said I was going to continue to record and wrap up all the work on this, but like I do, this is why I say I don't do how-to videos, because I suck at it, and I get to the point to where I don't want to record anymore. I don't want to dick around with the cameras anymore. So last night after I shut the camera off, I just kept at it, finished up the front end, and show you what I've done here. As you can see, got all the brakes back together. Everything's cleaned up quite nicely. Today I don't see any dripping on the fork tube. Nothing there as of right now. Got the brakes all cleaned up, new tire mounted, and the brakes do feel a lot better today. I bled all the brakes, bled the master cylinder, bled each caliper on both sides. I used a vacuum bleeder, and I did the old school bleed. I like to do that. Just, I don't know if one's any better than the other, but I'll vacuum bleed the system, get all new fluid in it, and then I'll go through and do like 3 or 4 pumps, the old school method. Also did the clutch slave cylinder. Bled that. For those that don't know, your bleeder for that is down here. Oh, where's she at? There it is, right there. Bled the rear brakes. I did change my switchbacks. As you can see, that is working properly now. The new ones I bought have a little bit different circuitry in them, I think. It seems like they're voltage sensitive where the old ones weren't. I guess it's not a problem when the bike's running, but when I had the bike sitting there like with the key on for a while and voltage dropped a little bit, it didn't want to quite act right. But with the bike on, they seem to be working fine. When I had all this off, I did do the fuel or the air filter last night. It wasn't dirty. I'm not sure why. Usually that thing's filthy, but it looked pretty good this time. Did change the oil. Got a brand new Wix filter in there. With some old Rotella T6 full synthetic diesel oil. Fight me in the comments if you think you shouldn't run that, but I've been running it for 10 years in this thing with no problem. So I think that's it. So where I'm at now is I did go ahead and start servicing this rear they call it propeller shaft or drive shaft. I'm just kind of going to go over what are the details to take this apart. So, I mean, obviously, first things first, you take your rear wheel off. You remove the, where's it at? Remove the 10 millimeter caliper bolt. Take your axle nut off. And then for those that don't know, these are spline drives. Once you have the axle out and the brake caliper is out of the way, you just kind of pick your wheel up, move it to the right, and she comes right out. So that's all it's required to take the rear wheel off these. So first thing to service this propeller shaft splines and clean everything up is to take the rear wheel off. The second step is to drop this torque arm. Single bolt. There's probably a lot of Loctite on that. Use a tight fitting Allen key, and just be really careful. Heat it up if you need to, but that will crack loose. And then once you remove this bolt, there is a rubber boot that sits in here, kind of like right in here. It's just a friction fit. There's no clamps or nothing on that. You might have to put your fingers in there a little bit and pull it out. Once you do that, this pivots down, and that leaves your the back side, which would be this side of the propeller shaft or drive shaft, and it will have the spring in the end of it. And those splines go down in here, so that will just pivot down and we'll leave the backside of the propeller shaft exposed. So that's pretty much, and make sure you drain your differential fluid or you're going to make a mess. I don't know, you might be able to get away with not draining it, but if you're going to do this service, you might as well put some new hypoid gear oil in it anyway, because that's part of the servicing. Once you have that drop down, then you have this section in here. For starters, you do have to remove this plate. It consists of, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bolts. They could have Loctite in them too. This one here for the rear tail section had the most Loctite. That thing really took some effort to pop her loose. But once you get that off, then you have a little ring that goes on here. I'm not sure what I did with my ring. Hope I didn't throw it in the trash. I want to go find that. It's probably laying here right in my face. I'll figure out what I did with it here in a little bit. But anyway, there's a little like clamp ring that's on here. And then there's one bolt that holds this cover in place. You can see this is the cover. And once you pop that ring out, take that bolt off, do a little, like that locks into place on that end, so don't try to pry that end out. This end comes out first. Then that removes, and that will expose the propeller shaft. And it takes a little bit of doing this. This boot here is just a friction fit again, but you will need to get it forward, pry it forward. I'm going to do a quick pause here just so I can do that. That's a noisy bird. So anyway, as I was saying, go away! Noisy ass bird. Alright, as I was saying, you pry that back, you got to do a little pulling and distorting. I put it back last night because I didn't want to leave this up on here all stretched out, distorting this overnight. So this is where you want to get it to get to this, this little pin right here. There, I'm trying to get the camera to focus. That little pin. That is a spring-loaded pin, and on the outside of the shaft, there is a pin hole. I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera. Hopefully you can. So anyway, all you do, take a little Allen key, or I used a punch, and you poke it down in that hole. And essentially what that does is pushes that pin in, and then that shaft should just release and pull right out. Now make sure this is clocked in like a 90 or like a 9 o'clock or a like a 10, 11 o'clock position. Obviously a 12 o'clock position, you can't get to it. This will just fall out. You will lose that little thing, and you won't have anything to hold your axle shaft in. So don't lose that little pin. Very important. So I left mine clocked in like this 10 o'clock position last night, and it's still in there. So no problems with that. So once you do that, that axle shaft or that propeller shaft will just slide out the back. And you have what I have here now. So the reason for doing this service is to lubricate these splines, and the splines at that end, and the splines up in the output shaft. You also want to lubricate this O-ring. The service manual says to replace this O-ring. I did not buy a new one, so hopefully this one will be fine. I mean, I don't know what that costs, but I'm putting the old one back in. So clean everything up. So we have propeller shaft, the spring that goes into the end that holds the tension. You have the rubber boot, plastic cover, the axle. This is what I'm using to lubricate those splines. What you're looking for is this moly disulfide grease. A lot of guys use assembly lube, or Honda Molly 77. I'm going to use this CV joint grease. Basically what you want is some thick grease that won't sling, that's long lasting for extreme pressure. So I found this at O'Reilly's for like $8. So I'm going to lube up the spines, clean everything up. I did a little bit last night, but the differential's still a little dirty. The right hand side swing arm's still a little dirty. I still need to clean up the caliper. So that's where I'm at now. I get to the step to where I have the shaft in and everything's kind of back together before I start covering everything back up. I'll come back on here and show you what I got. Okay, as you can see, I've got the propeller shaft in the housing. You have to line up that little pinhole on the propeller shaft with that pin that's on the output shaft. And you know, all I did, push in a little bit, locked into place. I got the boot back on here. That was a little cantankerous to get all pulled back into place there. It was kind of got in the way when I was putting the shaft back in. I think these little detent notches, there's one on the top and the bottom. I think you're just supposed to have one of those at the top, if I remember right. I'll find out when I get the cover back on. And as you can see, here is the tail end of the shaft. The spring goes inside here. And then I'll lube all these splines and seal up, put a little lube down in here, and then that will just hinge up and lock into place. Come back and show that here in a moment. Okay, pretty straightforward. One thing to remember is don't forget to put the boot on before raising this back up, or you'll have to lower it back down. Ask me how I know. But like I said, pretty straightforward. Lubed up the splines, lubed up the where the axle slides into the differential there. I did end up using my little aluminum floor jack to help assist. Made it just way easier. Lined up the strut torque mount there. So the only thing left to do is to put the cover back on and then reinstall all the foot control plate and all that good stuff. And then obviously put the rear tire back on. So it's coming along. Well, that's about it. She's all back together. Nothing surprising. Just put the wheel back on, buttoned up all the foot controls. Almost rounded that bolt off. These bolts are super soft on these things. I don't know why they don't make them out of a harder bolt. While I had it off, I lubed up my rear preload adjuster. It was froze up. Just sprayed some penetrating oil down in there. Turned it in and out. Did that about 15 times. Now she moves nice and freely. So yeah, got this all back on, tied in, got the controls back on, got the covers on with the seals. A little tip with these rubber boots, I put a little silicone grease on the inside of them where they slide onto the metal pieces, and it helped them glide in a lot easier. Maybe to help the next guy, which will probably be me, take it off a little simpler. And got everything all buttoned up, torqued down. It seems a little quieter. I don't know if I can give this a spin and you listen. Used to have a little bit of a thump when it turned like that. And now it's fairly quiet. So yeah, nice couple of days work here. Just to recap, new front tire, bled the front brakes, cleaned the front calipers, did some maintenance on the front fork seals. Hopefully those aren't leaking anymore. Bled the clutch, slave cylinder, put a new air filter in, new switchbacks, serviced the rear drive shaft or propeller shaft, whatever you want to call it. Bled the rear brakes. And I think that's it. I think that's everything I did. She's ready to go again. While I still got it on the lift, I'm going to get the old quick detailer out, get her all shined up, clean up some debris around the bottom of it and bug splats or whatever. So, but she's ready to rock. Take her out for a little test drive. Take her out for a little test ride, and the old girl's ready for another adventure. So, I think I'm going to go order some new front brake pads for it. These are all right for a couple more months. I'm going to go ahead and order another rear tire because I know I will be going through another one here before the season ends. I'm probably good for oil changes for this season. Yeah, I don't see myself doing another 5,000 miles this season. So that's it. Brake pads on the front, tire for the rear, and that's all I should have to put into her for this year. So I'm probably going to break this up into 2 different videos like I said earlier. Thanks a lot guys for watching. I appreciate your subscribing. This is just me in the shop working. I'm nothing special, but I'm glad you all follow along. It's pretty much, if I can do this, you can do this. Reach out to me. Maybe we could meet up for a ride, meet up for a trip. I try to get out as much as I can. You know, the Okani is my main steed. Still have the wife's Indian Scout. It's getting minimal usage this year, but there's kind of a reason for that. I don't care to ride it because it's not set up for me, but it is a phenomenal machine. Got the old KLR. It's going to fill in for local duties. I'm not sure I'm going to be doing any long distance. Oops, sorry. Don't think I'm going to be doing any long distance touring on it yet. I still enjoy doing that on the old Concours. So thanks a lot guys. I'll get off here. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you later.